Ever wondered how one of the most powerful women in history, a queen who seduced both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, ended up losing everything? Like, seriously, how does someone go from ruling Egypt to dying alone in a tomb while Rome eats her kingdom alive? It sounds like a tragic love story, but what if I told you it wasn't really about love at all? Because Cleopatra, she wasn't just some romantic figure floating around in silk robes. She was sharp, strategic, ruthless when she had to be. So how the hell did it all fall apart? Was it doomed from the start? Or did she actually have a chance to save her empire? In this video, we're cutting through the Hollywood drama and digging into the real story. We'll break down the clever political games she played, the backstabbing power moves of Rome, and how one small miscalculation triggered the downfall of Egypt's last true queen. You think you know Cleopatra? Not like this. Let's go. We're not just telling a sad story about Cleopatra losing her throne. We're asking a bigger question. Was her fall actually inevitable? Or could she have played her cards differently and held on to power, maybe even kept Egypt independent? To figure that out, we're going to break this down piece by piece. First, we'll look at the mess inside Cleopatra's own family. Because Egyptian dynastic politics? Yeah, let's just say betrayal wasn't rare at those dinner tables. Then we'll zoom out and check out what Rome was doing at the time. And spoiler, they weren't just minding their business. They were hungry for more territory, more power, and Egypt was right in their sights. From there, we'll look at the moves Cleopatra made, especially her relationships with Caesar and Mark Antony. Were those brilliant alliances or risky gambles that backfired? And finally, we'll dig into the state of Egypt itself, the economy, the people, and whether Cleopatra was actually ruling a crumbling empire from the start. So yeah, by the end of this video we'll have a full picture. Was Cleopatra doomed by fate? Or did she just make the wrong moves at the wrong time? Let's get into it. Let's rewind for a second, before the lovers, the drama, and the fall, and talk about who Cleopatra actually was, and what kind of world she was stepping into. So, Cleopatra VII wasn't just some exotic queen. She was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek family that had ruled Egypt ever since Alexander the Great's general took over after his death. Yep, Cleopatra was technically Greek, ruling an Egyptian empire. Kinda wild, right? But here's the thing. She was different from the rulers before her. For starters, she actually bothered to learn the Egyptian language, which most of her family didn't even try to do. She embraced the culture, spoke at least 7 languages, and positioned herself as more than a ruler, as a goddess. A smart branding move. Now let's talk about the world she inherited. Egypt, at this point, not the glorious empire it once was. It was still rich, full of grain, gold, and prestige, but it was also weak politically. Internally, there were power struggles, assassinations, and a constant fear of being swallowed up by a growing superpower. Rome. Rome, meanwhile, was in chaos. The Republic was basically tearing itself apart, with generals like Caesar and Pompey fighting over control. And Egypt? Well, let's just say it was in a very strategic spot, and Rome had its eye on it. So Cleopatra was stepping into a world where Rome was rising, Egypt was vulnerable, and she had to play a very dangerous game just to survive. And she played it like a pro, at least at first. Okay, now Cleopatra's world wasn't just chaotic on the outside. Inside her own palace walls, it was basically a Game of Thrones episode on repeat. She didn't just inherit a throne, she inherited a civil war waiting to happen. See, the Ptolemaic dynasty had a nasty habit. They kept power in the family by marrying siblings. Yeah, seriously. Cleopatra ended up ruling alongside her 10-year-old brother and marrying him, because that's what the dynasty did. But surprise, surprise, the two didn't exactly get along. Before long, things turned ugly. Cleopatra was pushed out of power by palace advisors who backed her brother, and she had to flee Alexandria and regroup. So, now she's out there, in exile, watching her throne get taken from her. Most people in her position would have stayed down. Cleopatra, she started plotting a comeback, and this is where Julius Caesar enters the picture. Rome had just beaten Pompey in Egypt, and Caesar was looking to settle things in the region. Cleopatra saw her shot. She snuck herself into Caesar's quarters, allegedly rolled up in a rug. Yeah, that scene from the movies might actually be true. And boom, suddenly she's got Rome's most powerful man on her side. With Caesar's backing, she defeats her brother's forces, reclaims the throne, and co-rules with her even younger brother. But this time, she's the one really in charge. So yeah, she didn't just climb to power. She fought her way through family betrayal, exile, and civil war, and came back stronger, more strategic, and way more dangerous. But as we'll see, backing Caesar came with a cost. So Cleopatra's back on the throne. But now, she's not just ruling Egypt. She's aligned with the most powerful man in Rome. Let's talk about that for a second. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar weren't just romantically involved, they were political partners. I mean, sure, there was definitely chemistry, but Cleopatra wasn't looking for love. She was playing chess. And Caesar, he wasn't exactly in Egypt for a vacation either. This was a power alliance. Cleopatra gave Caesar access to Egypt's insane wealth, grain, gold, ships, all the stuff Rome needed. And in return, Caesar gave her legitimacy, military backup, and a buffer against her enemies, both in Egypt and abroad. They even had a kid together, Caesarion, and Cleopatra believed he'd eventually inherit not just Egypt, but maybe even a claim to Rome. Now think about that. She wasn't thinking local, she was thinking empire level. But here's where it gets risky. Because in Rome, people weren't exactly thrilled about Caesar parading around with a foreign queen. Rumors flew. They accused him of going soft, of wanting to make himself king, with Cleopatra by his side as queen. And then, boom, 44 BC, Caesar gets assassinated. Suddenly, Cleopatra's power base in Rome is gone, just like that. And now she's left in this awkward position, tied to a dead man's legacy, hated by the Roman elite, and with no clear path forward. So here's the big question. Was backing Caesar a genius move, or the beginning of the end? Let's find out. Alright, Caesar's gone. Cleopatra's got no Roman ally. And now, the power vacuum in Rome turns into pure chaos. Enter Mark Antony, one of Caesar's closest generals, and soon Cleopatra's second Roman partner in both politics and passion. Now at first glance, this looks like a second chance, right? Antony's powerful, he controls the eastern provinces, and he's got ambitions of his own. Cleopatra wastes no time. She sails to meet him in style, golden barge, perfume in the air, dressed as Aphrodite herself. The message is loud and clear. She's still the queen, and she's ready to play the game again. And it works. Antony falls hard, not just for her beauty, but for what she offers. Money, resources, troops, and a political partner who understands power like he does. The two form this almost mythological duo. They have 3 children, share territory, and start presenting themselves like Eastern royalty, even going as far as calling Caesarion the rightful heir to Caesar. That definitely didn't sit well with Rome. But here's the thing. While Cleopatra saw this as a strategic partnership, most of Rome saw it as treason. Antony was still technically married to Octavia, the sister of Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and future first emperor. So when Antony fully sides with Cleopatra, Rome flips. Octavian paints him as a traitor, bewitched by a foreign queen. The propaganda? Ruthless? Rome didn't just go after Antony. They went after Cleopatra, turning her into a symbol of everything Rome feared. Decadence, seduction, foreign influence. So was this era a comeback? Or a trap? Because as powerful as this alliance looked, it also made Cleopatra public enemy number 1. And her empire was now tied to a man Rome was about to crush. And spoiler, that's exactly what they tried to do next. Alright, here's where things go from tense to disastrous. It's 31 BC. After years of trash talking and tension, Octavian finally makes his move. He declares war, not on Antony, that'd be messy, but officially on Cleopatra. Smart move. It makes her the villain, not a Roman Civil War hero. And in the eyes of the Roman people, she's a dangerous foreign queen seducing their beloved general. Now Cleopatra and Antony, they don't back down. They rally their fleet, a massive one, and head to Actium, on the western coast of Greece. This isn't just a battle, this is everything. Their power, their legacy, their survival. All of it is riding on this one final confrontation. But here's the twist. They totally botch it. Antony's forces are outmaneuvered. Octavian's general, Agrippa, cuts off their supply lines and forces a naval showdown. Cleopatra's ships are there, but instead of staying and fighting to the end, she sails away mid-battle. Why? No one knows for sure. Maybe she thought the fight was lost. Maybe it was a pre-agreed escape plan with Antony. Maybe it was pure survival instinct. Whatever the reason, it throws everything into chaos. And when Antony sees her fleet leaving, he follows, abandons the battle. The rest of their fleet? Demoralized, scattered, crushed. Actium isn't just a military loss, it's a total collapse of strategy, trust, and reputation. After that, it's just a matter of time. They retreat to Egypt, but the writing's on the wall. Octavian is coming. The empire they tried to build together, it's falling apart fast. And from here on out, we're headed straight for the end. So now, Cleopatra and Antony are back in Egypt, and it's clear there's no way out. Octavian is marching in. Their armies are broken. Their allies are gone. It's no longer a question of winning. It's about how they'll face the end. And what happens next? It's like something out of a Shakespeare tragedy, but it's real history. Antony hears a false report that Cleopatra is dead. In total despair, he falls on his own sword. But he doesn't die immediately. He's bleeding out, and someone tells him the truth. Cleopatra's still alive. So they carry him to her, and he literally dies in her arms. That moment, it's brutal, it's cinematic, and it sets the stage for her final move. Now Cleopatra knows there's no future where she wins. Octavian is closing in, and she refuses to be paraded through Rome as a trophy queen. That's not how she'll be remembered. So she makes her choice. She dresses in her finest robes, locks herself in her mausoleum, and, according to legend, kills herself using a venomous asp. Some say it was poison hidden in a hairpin. No one's entirely sure how. But one thing is clear. She took control of her ending, the way she always tried to control her story. And here's what's wild. Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar, was briefly declared pharaoh after her death. But Octavian had him executed shortly after. Just like that, the entire Ptolemaic dynasty, 300 years of rule, is gone. Egypt becomes a Roman province. Cleopatra is the last pharaoh. Her death marks the end of ancient Egypt as an independent power. But her legend? That's another story. Because Cleopatra didn't go down as just another ruler who lost her throne. She became a symbol of power, of seduction, of strategy, and of the impossible choices women in power had to make in a world built against them. So, after everything, the family drama, the alliances with Rome's biggest players, the battles, and the final tragic acts, you have to ask yourself, was Cleopatra's fall really inevitable? Let's be real. She was playing a high-stakes game in a world stacked against her. On one hand, she was incredibly smart, ruthless, and bold. She turned exile into power, courted the mightiest men of her time, and ruled Egypt during one of its most turbulent eras. But on the other hand, the odds were seriously against her. The Roman Republic was transforming into an empire, and Egypt was this wealthy but vulnerable kingdom caught in the crossfire. Her alliances with Caesar and Antony, genius moves, but also double-edged swords. They gave her power but tied her fate to men whose ambitions outpaced their loyalty to Egypt. Plus, the way the Romans saw her, not as a queen, but as a seductive foreigner threatening their Roman values, meant she faced opposition that wasn't just political, but deeply personal and cultural. So, was it all written in the stars from the start? Maybe. The combination of internal family betrayals, shifting Roman politics, and sheer bad timing made her downfall feel almost like destiny. But here's what I want you to take away. Cleopatra's story isn't just about how she fell. It's about how fiercely she fought to stay on top until the very end. Her legacy isn't just tragedy. It's power, survival, and the complex realities of leadership in a ruthless world. And honestly, that makes her story way more fascinating than a simple rise and fall. If this breakdown of Cleopatra's fall got you thinking, hit subscribe. We dive into the real power plays behind history's biggest names, not just the surface stuff. And hey, drop a comment. What part of Cleopatra's story do you want to see next? Her rise to power? Her mind games with Rome? You decide.